Welcome to On the Edge with April Mahoney Brains. You're at the spot, the place, where the conversation is pointed, the guests are sharp, and the responses are never dull. Did you bring your thinking caps? It's time to put them on, because the conversation starts now. Welcome to On the Edge with April Mahoney Brains. You're at your favorite spot, the best podcast on the planet, the place, where the conversation is pointed, the guests are sharp, and the responses are never dull. We're going to a new place today, Wagga Wagga, Australia. I never heard it. It's near Sydney, right there above Sydney, right? No, you said Sydney.
Halfway between Melbourne and Sydney. Yeah.
Halfway between Melbourne and Sydney. So when you're going that way, stop by and see Bronwyn Boyle. She's going to be able to talk to you, educate you, and help facilitate what your archetypes are. Exactly what is an archetype for your life? There's more than one. I had a friend that kind of ran me through it a little bit, but I didn't kind of get it. I'm going to get it today because she's here to teach us full throttle. Thank you so much for being with us, Bronwyn. Tell us a little bit about your story, your journey, your truth, and how you show up in the world.
Well, just, the smallest questions that can be asked. Yeah, let's go. Um, Look, I'm Australian through and through. I've traveled the world, but Australia is always home. I'm from a small country town in Western Australia. You know, I I grew up on wheat and sheep farm. It's as rural and as basic as you can get. And yeah, always knew that there was more. So went off on a bit of a journey, I guess. And when I think about the life that I've lived, I could never have imagined uh, how rich and amazing a life you could have just from such very humble and believe you me, very humble beginnings. Still humble, but yeah, a life of many twists and turns.
Okay, so were you? How many were in in your family? How many children?
So I have an older brother. He's 3 years older than me, and when I first really delved into actually no, I'm going to back it up a bit on the press the pause button. So yeah, I think the my life journey's really been one of self-discovery and discovery through others. From what I said was very humble beginnings on a wheat and sheep farm to having various managerial positions in justice, so prisons, community justice, and courts, and that was really a really big learning ground for me. And when I think about my 10 years working in the Department of Justice in Western Australia, I reflect on those years so much because it taught me so much about people at their best and at their worst and everything in between.
Right.
And it brought me, and it was through my work there that it brought me to archetypes. So I think of those years very, very fondly and what it created for me moving forward.
What kind of things did you do? And didn't you tell me that you also worked in a women's prison?
Yeah, oh, well, yeah. So I worked in all areas of justice. I covered everything, and I worked on a special project for a pre-release centre in Perth for women, but also spent a lot of time in men's prisons and women's, and also in Western Australia because it's such a big state and sparsely populated to keep women close to their families. They're often housed in men's prisons, so they're very restricted in their experience and their life when they're so closely protected. They don't have the access to services and things may have changed since I worked there, but I don't know that it's changed that much.
Wow. Well, prison is not supposed to be the Ritz-Carlton. But I have found that it can just, here in the United States, it'll break you. And, again, it's meant to teach you a lesson, but, women aren't able to even have proper sanitation. I know I did that. I gathered a bunch of stuff, shipped it to them. They returned it. They said the women had to work for it in their commissary. Um,
Yeah.
the rehabilitation. What is rehabilitation? And it should be at the forefront. People should have an opportunity to reintroduce themselves into society and not, go out with absolutely nothing. That's how you got in there to begin with. And then the psychological thing. You're separated. If you're a woman, you're separated from your child. If you're a man, you're separated. Uh, and the disrespect. It's just a lot. Tell us some of the positive things that you experienced while working in the prisons and some of the things you implemented towards a change.
So I'll preface what I'm about to say by um, I always treated my time working in justice. No, I learned to treat my work and my time working in the Department of Justice as people being where they are is the punishment, not what happens to them while they're there.
Mm,
And being deprived of your liberty is the punishment. And depriving, and one of the things someone said to me very early in that career said, you treat people like animals, you'll get animals. And so I always treated everybody from staff to prisoners to their family, everybody I treated with dignity. And that really helped me. And it helped me forge really good relationships. And even when I was in courts, you had the same people come through again and again, and it'd be, "Oh, you're back," and have a conversation with people that people need to be seen.
yeah,
And in my work since, the power of truly being seen is one of the most powerful things you can do for someone is to see them truly.
yeah, it is.
So yeah, and I think some of the positive things that I was able to experience and pass on through that time was to give people the dignity, was to speak to people as if they were I I was talking to them in a shopping aisle or obviously the context wasn't and but it really got me a long way and it got prisoners sometimes some of those interactions because I wasn't the only one doing that. It's not like I was some martyr walking around bestowing wonderful conversations on prisoners.
No.
No, no, there was, there was a group of us and these were the people who mentored me through, and they were women that worked in justice, not so much the men. The men tended to have a more punitive relationship, I guess, within that system.
Mm, So fast forward,
And,
you
sorry.
leave that and tell us a little bit about, well, number one, define what are archetypes.
Okay, so archetypes are they're patterns of power. So think of yourself or your life as a storybook. And who are the characters that you most often play? What are the patterns, those characters and storylines that repeat over and over? So, an archetype is a character. So, if I say to you the word bully, you already in your mind have either someone's face that you know of as a bully or someone who's been bullied. If you're bullied yourself, it will be the bully who picked on you.
Mhm.
Uh, so so an archetype is one word that you have a really good paragraph of understanding about what that word means. And so when we speak archetype, if you call someone a princess, you'll have a version in your mind of what a princess is. The entrepreneur as an archetype, the visionary, the pioneer, the teacher, the mentor. They're all archetypes. And when you find in the card deck of life, you're looking for your strong suit. So, what are the most prevalent, powerful patterns in your life, and how do those storylines play out?
Okay. And how do you
Does that
assess
help?
that?
Sorry?
How do you figure out what your characteristics are? How do you assess that?
Well, we all read people intuitively, and we describe people by archetypes. You speak to any primary school teacher, and they will describe the students in their class by archetype.
Mm,
He's a little prince. He's a little this. She's a little that. They are describing archetypes.
okay.
And so one, we intuitively pick that up. But secondly, the patterns are what they are. So the archetype is the template. And the story in your life of how that template, how the story plays out in that template is individual to you. So, the visionary is a visionary.
Right.
They have big ideas. You know, they have to enroll others in their vision to be able to create it because you can't do it on your own. So if you say visionary, you can imagine how big the vision is,
Right.
and not everybody has it. So,
Mm.
but if you do, you want to know that and understand what that means for you in your life.
Right. 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 And how it applies to your soul purpose and your purpose for being here. Because
Yeah.
again, brains, I know we're not just supposed to be sitting here looking like lunch meat. We're supposed to be moving
Oh,
and shaking and doing something. Each one of us is supposed to be doing something. And we have a goal, or we should set goals. People don't even do that anymore, Bronwyn. They don't set goals. So
mm.
you want them to go backwards and do the deep dive when they want to go full throttle. How do we just, stop, pump our brakes, and say, hey, this is going to be valuable. This is something that I should study. This is something I should know to help me propel me to the next level.
Well, so many people, and seriously, the number of people that say, "Why does this keep happening to me?" Or "Here I am again."
Mhm.
And we all have crossroads in our life. We have crossroadettes and we have major crossroads. And major crossroads look like things like divorce, death, a health event, getting married, having kids. They're major crossroads where nothing's ever going to be the same again. There's no one doing this bit.
Okay.
So you come to that crossroads where you've got to make a decision. Do I go this way, which way do I go?
Right.
And, you know, if you keep picking this way and you keep ending up here, and
Right.
that's not where you want to end up, then you might have to try another way. But that takes understanding some of the dynamics that brought you to that point. And also, one of the archetypes that I feel very strongly for myself is the witness. And I feel like I've had a lifetime of bearing witness for people.
Wow.
Even before any career, it was that little sense of, did you see that? And I was the one who saw it. It's like, yes,
Right.
it
Right.
happened. It actually happened. And sometimes people really need a witness to really see their story, understand their story, and help it make sense to them and know that they're not going crazy,
Right.
that this really is happening. And I find that a lot with people as they go, am I going crazy? Is this real? And in relationships, people who have the same relationship over and over again with a different person, here we are again. And to be able to understand the basics of yourself, because there are four archetypes that we all share, which is the foundational archetypes that I generally start with people, because otherwise the ego goes off shopping for other things, right?
Absolutely.
So if you can understand within yourself, I'm going to name the four, right? So we've got the victim, the prostitute, the child, and the saboteur. So we all prostitute ourselves in some way. We all compromise.
No. Really?
Yeah, we all sell ourselves out for
I
something.
know.
And
Well, at
so
least I want to. Can I be at a brothel if I'm selling my soul? If I'm
oh, you
selling
can
my
do it.
soul to the devil. And again, like you said, I tell people all the time, you don't send your true authentic self. That's a crock. You send your representative, something that you have polished and shined and put forward. You don't even write your own resume. You let AI or a friend do it. And then you get into the interview and you go to speak to it and it's a totally different person. They know that that's not you.
Yeah.
So I get that. Okay. So yeah, I get
Yeah.
it.
So yeah, it's how do you compromise yourself? What's your price? Everyone's got a price. Know what your price is. And when you're approaching that line, The victim, where do you blame other people? Where do you victimize others? Because people might play the blame game, but they don't often consider where they stand in that when they're being blamed for something. So
Absolutely.
understanding
And they gaslight
energetically,
you. They want to make you
yeah,
think that you're crazy, you know.
yeah.
And don't want to take responsibility for their own actions. Or they're
Well,
completely narcissistic and they just, the hell with you, you don't even exist. You're just
yeah, well, and well, that's the child doesn't want to take responsibility. So the child in us, childlike is endearing, childish, not so much.
Mhm.
So if you're being childlike, everyone loves to be around a magical child when it's all fun and games. The magical child brings out something in us that it takes that energy to do that,
Right, right.
right? But the flip side of the magical child is they can be prone to depression. They can be prone to those that self-doubt, the not taking responsibility, and really, yeah. So there's a light and shadow in every
That
archetype.
part of
It's
the
high.
personality be the careless, reckless person.
Uh, it could be a different archetype. Depends how that pattern shows up and plays out.
Okay.
Because, that's one of the reasons I don't really deal in hypotheticals a great deal, simply because when you're dealing with a real situation, it's got real energy. It's got life to it. Whereas hypotheticals, there's always a little inbuilt back door or side door where someone can slip in an extra fact or, you know, just play with the hypothetical a bit because there's always an exception to the rule. But a real live example is gold.
Mm,
And we'll finish with the saboteur. The saboteur. We all know what it is to sabotage ourselves. The people, for some people, it's the chronic lateness.
mm,
They're always running late, and for sometimes it can save them, and other times it sabotages them, because they are our survival instincts after all, and where we sabotage others.
mm,
The saboteur is this archetypal pattern where you reach a point and you have to make a decision. Do I step into power or do I take a step back?
mhm,
Do I accept the challenge? Do I step in and risk it? Or
mm,
do I step back and let that go through to the keeper
mm. And
when I should have
the,
taken
the
that swing?
the sabotage, a lot of times people go for that because they are afraid of success. They
Mm,
are afraid of tasting the gold. I was listening to Joe Dispenza, and one of my favorite meditations of his is talking about being a billionaire. You have to live that experience. You have to embody it right now. You have to create it almost as a memory in your mind. But you cannot be afraid of the success. I mean, $1 billion. Wow. Well, I mean, years ago, $1 million was the wow factor. It is, what are you going to do with that? How does that person look? How does that person smell? How do they interact? How do they pay it forward? How do they reward and recognize? How do they show gratitude? All of
yeah.
those things are things that you would look at when you're not trying to sabotage yourself. Others is like, oh, well, maybe if I don't make a decision on a certain thing, or maybe if I allow someone else to take responsibility or take credit for it, or I'm not good enough. When you have those kind of self-fulfilling prophecies leading the way, you are definitely going to deviate from where you're supposed to be. But then sometimes it's so late in the game that people feel that there's not an opportunity to change. What do you say to that person that's stuck?
There's always another choice, always. And one of the difficulties for people is they think that this is the only choice or this is the choice and it's forever. Somehow that choosing this thing means they've committed to a course that they haven't. They've just made a choice to move the dial a bit to get to the next choice, to get to the next choice.
And we have an
So,
opportunity to change our mind. We're women.
yeah, that's an absolute yes. And we get to make other choices. And I always know for myself when I look at who I'm asking advice from or who
Right,
I'm talking to, that tells me the quality of an answer that I'm looking for.
right.
If I want to do something, I'll go and find somebody that will agree with me.
Hmm.
If I want to test it out, I'll go and ask someone who will play a bit of devil's advocate.
Hmm.
Uh, if it's one of those real big crossroads moments and I'm really just sitting there on a precipice, there's a couple of go-to people that I know will tell me with my best interest in heart, and they'll be honest with me even when it hurts. If I'm
You
so
have
I know
somebody.
by who I'm asking what the quality of the answer is that I'm looking for.
Right. Well, I tell my daughter all the time, you are who you hang around,
Hmm.
and you are
Yeah.
what you eat. And what I mean is spiritually, financially, socially, mentally, sexually, you know,
Yeah.
whoever comes into your space and you let them lay upon your frequency, either they
Yeah.
tune in, tune out, or they go to a higher place or a lower place. Well, what is your vibrational energy? Do you even know? Do you have expectations for yourself, brains? Do you set goals? I had a talk with my daughter. I know when she listened to this show, she's like, I wish you leave me alone.
Well,
But
the brains out there listening, the goal setting is a
yes.
really good, like, it's one of the things I do with teams when I'm doing a bit of team building with a business, and just getting people to do goals together so
Mhm.
that they can help each other achieve those goals. And a short term, a medium term, and a big scary one that is 5 years down the track, maybe, or whatever that looks like. And you don't know what people are wanting to achieve in life. If you don't set goals and you don't, I'm not saying you have to tell everybody about them, but when you spend that much time with people all day, every day, you might want some help to achieve some of those goals.
Right. Right.
And people genuinely do like to help others. And if everybody's helping each other to achieve their goals, just setting a goal. When I, as a business I started with a few weeks ago, and they'd never set goals. And so we started, and it took a little bit of time, but it's like, okay, let's have a look. And once you actually started to tease some goals out, you could see the amount of animation and involvement, and it lifted. And setting goals is just a basic.
But it's a
And
part of your dream. You know,
mm,
you have to have something to live for. Called hope, brains.
well, you're building scaffolding towards something. And where a lot of people start to spin their wheels is they're sitting there. This is Groundhog Day again and again. I get up, I go to work, I do these are the same things I do every day. I come home, have some dinner, go to bed, get up, do it all again. And if you can wrap some goals around that stuff and give it purpose, or wake yourself up enough to go, is this it? And a lot of people wait till midlife because they look in the rearview mirror and they go, wow, I'm halfway along this journey. And what am I going
I'm
to do with
as
the
you
rest
say in
of
Australia, I'm a bit long in the tooth.
it? Well, so we're all closer, a lot of us are closer to the grave than we are to the cradle. And
Absolutely.
that's, I look at how I've spent the last 50 odd years of my life. Yes, I've packed a lot into it. There's other moments I could have done better. I could have done more. I could have backed off the accelerator a little bit and just smelled the roses and the coffee a bit longer. But that's done. Now it's like moving forward. What am I wanting to do with the rest of my life? And if you have, and I know people that The mother archetype is one of my favorites to talk about with women. And you don't need to physically be a mother to have that archetype, but generally speaking, let's say the mothers out there. The mother as an archetype is front and center. In the early years, it's doing a lot of heavy lifting, and there's no room for the others. It's very difficult to juggle all of those roles. And at some point, as the children get older, they need you less. And so you'll never not be a mother, but the archetype of the mother can take a step back. And as the kids become much truly more independent, then the other archetypes within us start to, go, where's my time to shine? And so another archetype, and so generally there'll be an art class or a hobby, go back to school, start a business, get a job, or change the type of work you're doing because you worked school hours for a decade or decade and a half while the kids were growing up. You know, there's so much changes, and it's re-engaging a part of yourself that wants something different. So the mother still gets to be the mother, but she's not changing nappies or diapers,
Mhm.
as the Americans would say,
Mhm.
anymore.
Well,
So,
also too,
yeah,
they want to, unfortunately, in some situations, they want to relive their life vicariously through their children. They
yeah.
were never the prom queen. They were never the academic scholar. They weren't the doctor. They didn't marry up. They didn't. So it's always a comparison. It's chasing your tail. It's living the imposter syndrome. And that's very dangerous. But it takes courage to rise up and realize who you really are and what you're supposed to be. I mean, you don't have to be, again, Bronwyn came from very humble beginnings and propelled herself into the place that she is now. There's somebody that's at the top of their game that just wants simplicity. They just want to be able to be on that sheep and wheat farm and say,
Hmm.
you know what, I don't want the mainstream media influencing me. I don't want to have to go to a brick and mortar to make my money. I just want to be out here and be free. What do you say to the person that is really looking to maybe downsize and find a simpler life? Everyone's not always in that straight linear trajectory to go to the moon and go to Mars. Sometimes they just want to level out or chill out.
Well, archetypally, those people tend to be like your hermits and your seekers, and that they get to a point where they just want to step out. And when life's really busy and you've got to pay bills and put a roof over your head, food on the table, all of that stuff, you don't often have the luxury of being able to take yourself away. And so the majority of people I speak to that are able to do that successfully, to step away and live a quieter life,
Mhm.
have put themselves or have been fortunate enough to be in a position where they can afford to do that.
Mhm.
And so what I a lot of the work with people is one, people becoming comfortable with the choices that they've made, and then looking at what are the choices I'd like to be able to make. And do I have the muscle in me? Do I have the power in me to make it happen? So I'm not an entrepreneur, as much as it might be handy sometimes. Uh, Entrepreneurs are kind of pseudo gamblers, if you like. They need to do their thing. But entrepreneurs are serial gamblers with business, but they make educated gambles, I guess, with what they're doing forward. I'm not an entrepreneur. I wish I was. I can have entrepreneurial moments, but I don't have the muscle or the power to the level. Think of it as E10 through to flaming butane 98 proof petrol, gas.
Mhm.
Simple unleaded. I've got a number of archetypes, simple unleaded. They're not flaming butane. What you're looking for is in the card deck of life, what am I flaming butane? What do I have the most power in that I can really supercharge when I need to?
Mm.
I could do any number of things. I will never be that entrepreneur ever. I can hang out with entrepreneurs. I can collaborate with an entrepreneur, but an entrepreneur isn't guaranteed success either. Entrepreneurs
Oh,
crash and burn
oh,
all the time.
absolutely, absolutely. Trial and error with that. So,
So you're looking for the archetypes that are the strongest within you, that you don't have to spend all of your time and energy putting those masks on to be who people think or you think people need you to be. You've been told you need to be successful. You've been told to be a good mother, a good this, a good that. And so people pick those masks up that people have told them and they put them on and they get heavy. And so when people later in life go, I just want a simple life, it could be that the hermit's always been there and they want to go off and live a very quiet life with their paints and their canvas or their books or their music, whatever that is.
yep,
And the culmination of their choices hopefully enables that to happen in a way that's sustainable.
right. So, who's your ideal client?
My ideal client is somebody who they're normally women, 45 plus, kind of that perimenopausal age group. They're starting to examine their life. They've been able to take a step back for a moment and go, what do I want? Whether that's because the kids have grown or they've reached somewhere in their career where now there's time for some change. They can feel the sand shifting under their feet and they're at a crossroads. They're my ideal clients because they're searching. They want to understand why they're here. For what reason was I born? What's my life purpose? We have more than one purpose, but let's say what is a purpose that I can take into the next decade or the next stage of my life with everything that I've done.
That's the first
And
thing that I ask every day is bring me my highest and greatest good. What else is possible and how can it get any better than this? You know,
hmm
I have to lay the foundation, the groundwork. So we've done the heavy lifting. Let's talk about some fun stuff.
okay.
You're in the thralls of writing a book. Where do you go for inspiration?
Inspiration. It's people. People are so interesting.
Yes, they
And
are.
they are
They're
so
all
interesting.
different. They're all different.
Well, and I've got a puppy too, and he's 7 months old, and little Schnitzel, he is a little mischievous monkey, and I watch him and I can watch him thinking, and you watch people and you watch them thinking, and you can see, you know, part of the joy of is watching people enjoy their life, to watch people really when they've found something they're really good at. Passion is one thing, but when they're really good at something and they become a master at it,
Right.
and you know, to be able to watch that, I love watching. You can pick the archetype, you can see it.
Mm.
Somebody who knows who they are, they're not apologizing for it, and they take risks,
But that's very
educated
bold.
risks. You know,
That's
you
very
got to take
bold.
risks.
Yeah. And you have to be a risk taker, a bit of a gambler, because it all
Mm,
is a crapshoot. Now, it may not all go the way that you want. You do all this fancy work and you know your archetypes and all that, but if you don't apply common sense and
yeah.
practical application, it's all in vain. So,
Oh, look, one of my friends in college was never going to get married, never going to have kids, all of that stuff. No, not interested, not interested. And she's quite the entrepreneur. And w- sure enough, she gets married, has kids, or has kids, gets married, whichever, and oh my goodness. Once she had her first baby and then said, Bronwyn, I could have a football team.
Oh,
I never knew I could love this much.
right, right.
And if you went from what she said, you wouldn't have thought she was a mother. But as she became a mother, she embodied the archetype of the mother like 1,000%. It was incredible to watch. And those sorts of things, watching people um, be who they are, learn who they are, know who they are, and be it, that floats my boat.
Uh,
That sounds boring, maybe, now that I've said
No,
that. But
fine. Well, let's spice it up a little bit. If you were an appliance in the kitchen, what appliance would you be and why?
ooh, I'm 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 probably going to go with a coffee machine.
I get a lot of coffee
Heat,
machines. Why? You want to
yeah, heat and pressure. Heat and pressure brings out the best in me. And so I kind of think I'm a coffee machine, but I
Ah,
need heat and pressure. Yeah.
I'm the refrigerator. I just want to
Oh,
sit
really?
somewhere. Yeah, I want to sit somewhere and chill, nice and cool. I want to be somewhere that you have to come often and regularly, that you appreciate me, and that you are heartbroken when I'm not working.
Well done. I love that. I'm going to steal that because that is
Absolutely.
gold.
Yeah.
I think I need to be a refrigerator.
Refrigerator
I
is the
just love
shit,
that
man.
about
I'm
myself.
telling you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you could time travel, go back to the past, stay here in the present, project to the future, where are you landing?
Oh, look, there's a couple of answers to that one that I'd like. I would like to go 100 years into the future and see what the consequences of my generation or our generation are in
Mhm.
the future. Uh, and I would like to go back. I'd like to go back a long way. Some weeks I'd like to go back and see how the pyramids were done.
Mm.
I'd like to go back to when the goddess was and really see the power of the feminine in its full swing. I think, there's so much that's going on in our atmosphere right now. The bringing down, or no, I don't even know if I'd put it that way, but the masculine is rocking and rolling right now.
I was
And
telling
so,
somebody else, you know what they say here in the US? Oh, he's bringing that big dick energy. Really?
mm,
Oh, they toss that word or they toss that phrase around like, And what you have to understand in that, brains, is that yes, there is a strong masculine, but there is a divine feminine. And we need to embrace that because that is the mother. That is the mother earth. There's nothing that has come on this planet without coming through a mother. And so, yes, the man plants the seed. He's the hunter. He's the gatherer by uh, what is that? History has proven. But if you go further back, you look at Cleopatra and, you look at other women that have just really taken hold. I know when we went to Scotland and Ireland, I really didn't realize how many queens actually ran things and commanded troops in wars. And you just don't hear those kind of things. So there is a duality there. I think that the
yeah, and
tide is shifting now because we're in the age of Aquarius and it's a much more female centric design. But I don't really think that we're pushing it full throttle the way that we could.
well, the pendulum swings, doesn't it? And so, the pendulum swings, it's swinging to an extreme and it's got to, settle back down again. And, laws of physics, I guess. But yeah, I would like to have seen a time. I'd like to see a time when the feminine was fully feminine and lived, not women existing within. And that's why I said, I reflect on my time working in justice and in prisons a lot. And when I think about women existing in men's prison, they had a very small they had limited access. And the men, so the men had the full run of the prison, and the women had this tiny little corner
Oh, wow.
locked
So
away
it's a
from the.
co-ed prison there?
Yeah, yeah. Many men's prisons have
Shut
women in them.
the front door. What?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We have,
Well, because one of the tenets of people in prison in Western Australia um, was the success rate was of someone's sentence, if you like. One of the factors was proximity to family or support networks.
Mhm.
And so that overrides because there's only one women's prison in Australia and it's in Perth. And
Mhm.
that, the other if they're from far north
Right.
and they're thousands of kilometers away from their kids and their family and their support network. So it was how do we find a way to house a small number of women in a men's prison safely and give them enough access that they can do their sentence, you know.
Everybody's different, but what's the run rate there? I mean, here in the United States, we just go crazy because we've got access to guns. So, but what are people going to jail for? Is it drugs? Is it you know, money laundering? Is it abuse? What? And I know that again, it's not a pattern, but what are you saying statistically?
Statistically, the pattern that I would focus on would be that it's lack of resources or poverty.
Hmm.
Because I worked in courts for a long time, and so I sat out on the bench in front of the bench with the judge behind me and or the magistrate behind me. And the thing about that was you could see the people that could afford the lawyers or the really good lawyers were sentenced differently. They argued their points differently. People who didn't have those resources
Mhm.
or have a family history or really low self-esteem or because you read the pre-sentence reports and I've written enough pre-sentence reports during that time when I was a community corrections officer that it's lack of access and poverty that limits people's choices. And that I think is the main thing that I saw people end up in prison for. And I'm not a bleeding heart. I don't mean it in the way, yes, if you do the crime, do the time and all that stuff. But there are some things that happen in prison that, and women often thrived in prison because they had their kids, they didn't have to look after the kids. They could access education, they could do programs, they could concentrate on themselves, for some, the first time ever.
Hmm.
So, I've watched Orange is the New Black, and I'm not, that's, our prisons are nothing like that, but I have been to an American prison in Georgia, and it wasn't anything like anything I've seen here in Australia. So, you have so many different levels of prison.
Mhm. Mhm.
Australia has our population is much smaller. You've got, more people in prison than I think we have in the whole of Australia. I mean, I don't know that for sure, but the numbers are high.
Staggering. They're staggering.
It
And
is quite staggering.
we have again racism. We have
Mm,
classism. We have
yeah.
people that are denied their rights, people that are manipulated out of their rights, people that are bullied in out of their rights. I get that they don't have access to good lawyers. And then when they go into these facilities, there's no true rehabilitation to set you up for success. Or when you come out, society has changed so much with technology, innovation, job requirements that you're behind the curve, that you go back to that same pattern of dysfunction because it's comfortable and it's familiar. So to be able to work with someone like you, Bronwyn, is a gift. And
Look, I used to get letters from prisoners that I wasn't working professionally with them with what I do now, but it sowed the seeds. And my first foray, I haven't really ever told you how I got into archetypes in the first place. Um, I was driving, I'd got a big promotion. I was the manager of operational review for prisons for Western Australia, which meant I put specialist teams together and we went in situ. We went into a prison, unfettered access, stayed at, not slept in it, but all day, every day in the prison, um, with a room that no one else in the prison had access to. And we could come in and say, give us keys, we're coming in.
Mm,
And so I was about to start my first big review of a prison, and it was the, maximum security remand prison in Perth, and trigger warning, a woman committed suicide in front of me on my way into the office that day. And I remember this woman was somehow connected to me in four different ways, professionally and personally,
mm,
but I didn't know her. And it set off a series of events because one of the connections was through prisons. And without going out, I can't go too far into it because I don't want to identify anyone, but um, that was a moment where was just like, why was I even here? Why did this happen? Like, what can I draw out of this? What on earth happened? And as the weeks and months unfolded after that, I got to learn quite a story. And for me, it started me on a more conscious journey. And I had seen a woman by the name of Carolyn Mace speak in Perth a couple of years before that, and she talked about archetypes.
mm,
And she had written a book called Sacred Contracts. I think her first New York Times bestseller was Anatomy of Spirit, but this was Sacred Contracts. She was touring Australia, and I had a deck of the archetype cards. And what happened in that time was I got to somehow I was seeing patterns in my life. And what I found with the archetypes was it gave me an impersonal way to look at a personal journey. So once I teased out, I really took a deep dive and I ended up studying with Carolyn Mace at her institute in Chicago and yeah, went full throttle into archetypes because I found it was a tool, a modality and a tool that really helped me understand some pretty powerful stuff that was happening in me and around me at that time. And it made sense of my 10 years. So I only stayed in justice for a few years after that.
mm.
I I was manager of the parole board and I did lots of other managerial positions as kind of an interim manager.
Right.
And I learned so much,
Well, it seems
so
like you have really, not mastered because we can never master the mind as ever evolving, but you have mastered a sequence, a pattern that people can follow, use as a template to discover and uncover. Again, every day is brand new, and we can do all the work and we can, pre-design and then run into a stumbling block and have to change the plan midstream. But that's okay. You have a right to change your mind. You have a right to realize that, ooh, I was going in this direction and it doesn't feel good. It's not working for me. Or I find myself stuck in the same place that I've been the last 10 times before. Or you could be that person that says, I'm going to forge ahead and I'm going to take this information and I'm going to create a new lane. I'm going to create a brand new highway. I'm going to travel at a different speed. I'm going to travel at the speed of light and hope that the light is not a train because I'm moving full throttle. Thank you so much, Bronwyn, for being here on the show. Tell my brains how to get in contact with you and what they have to look forward to when you produce your book and how they can follow you on social media.
yes, so my email is bronwyn@bronwynboyle.com. You can get hold of me on LinkedIn is probably the easiest way. Archetypes for Life is my company. Or there's a QR code here if anyone wanted to have a discovery session and discover an archetypal pattern of their own. And I look forward to working with people in the future. So thank you. Thanks for this opportunity.
Yeah, I think it's going to be absolutely brilliant. Brains, go in and love, like, share, and subscribe. Do the deep dive, rewind, because this was a heavy conversation. This is taking you out of quote unquote the norm. There's nothing normal about what's happening right now. This is supernatural. This is quantum physics. This is next level 5G, the next dimension, the changing of civilization. I tell y'all that every day. Are you listening to me? But no, you go back to the same old patterns. And, if you do what you've always done, you're going to get what you always got. And what did Einstein say? That's insanity. So get it together, brains. Okay. Thank you, Bronwyn, for being here on the edge. We value you. We appreciate you. We respect you. And again, I give you your flowers for going in and working with those that have been overlooked and underserved. Everybody in prison is not a bad person. I don't believe anybody in prison is is a bad person. They're just in a bad position. Thank you.
Thank you.